Hoardganize Podcast. I am your host, professional organizer Rachel Seavey, and it's time to get organized. Hey, collectors. Welcome to the Hoardganize Podcast. I am your host, professional organizer Rachel Seavey, and it has been way too long since I put out a podcast. I know, it's just kind of crazy times. I'm sure you all agree with COVID-19 going on and the pandemic. It's been really hard to balance everything for me during all these, as we're calling them, uncertain times. For the first time in my life, I've been out of work and having to scramble to get my coaching business together and try and make ends meet for myself and my son. So it's been pretty trying over on this end. And while I've had some extra time on my hands, I've actually been spending it with my son, on myself, self-improvement. I've been taking classes. I've been trying to boost up my resume so that I can offer more services that are online rather than offline, because it's very hard to be invited over to people's homes right now with everything going on. So I'm sure you understand. I really want to thank the people that have reached out to me and made sure that I'm okay. I am doing well. I am healthy. I am very lucky and blessed to be, alive right now during this time and surviving. So all is good on this front. Thank you so much for checking in. And if you do want to follow me some more, I am on social media. I'm on Instagram under Collector Care 1. I'm on Facebook under Collector Care. And I'm on YouTube under Collector Care Tips, where all of my Hoardganize podcasts are available and you can see me in video. Now, this episode is kind of a follow-up to the very first episode that I ever did with you guys, besides the one where I introduced myself. And I should probably do another one like that because I've got different relationship status, different pets, things like that. So this one is about, where do I begin? It's still one of the main questions that I get when I'm in the field, when I'm coaching people online now. Where do I begin? It's so overwhelming for people. And it's something that I covered a lot in my earliest episodes, but I was more about focusing on where to actually begin in your house, which I will touch on lightly. But if you want some more examples on where to begin in your house, please visit my Where Do I Begin episode, which I believe is episode 2, and I have a whole bunch of follow-up episodes about that topic. One thing I didn't mention in that original episode is, where do you begin really starts within yourself. If you aren't able to commit to yourself to getting organized and going through the process, then it really doesn't even matter where you start in your home, because it's going to be difficult for you to get the outcome that you truly desire if you aren't emotionally involved and emotionally ready to get this project done. The very first place to begin is within yourself. You want to ask yourself, are you ready to let things go? Are you ready to take the time and energy? Do you have the time and energy that it takes to complete a project like this? Are your intentions realistic? Do you have a deadline that's realistic? Do you have goals and plans that are legitimately realistic for you to get organized? What has been holding you back from getting started? You definitely want to ask yourself that question. And you've got to just make sure within yourself that you're ready to let things go and to begin decluttering, because decluttering is the very beginning of getting organized. If you're not ready, you'll get in your way. You'll get in your own way. You'll trip over yourself and you'll be frustrated and you won't be able to continue. I see people that are not internally ready try and attempt this project, and they feel, bummed out that they weren't able to do it. But inside, deep inside, they weren't truly ready to begin. So I'm going to offer you 3 tips on how to begin within yourself and how to begin in your home. Tip number 1 for being organized within yourself and knowing that you're ready is you must be willing to let things go. You absolutely must be willing to let things go. You could get everything stored in labeled boxes, meticulously packed, but you're not truly organized if you still have a hoardganized and organized hoard, in a spare room or in your garage. You really have to be ready to let some things go in order to get organized. Every single item in your home at some point should come under scrutiny and asked, is it serving its purpose anymore? And if it's not, it's got to go. It's got to make room for things that you really love and use. So you've got to push through the emotions of being afraid to let things go, being afraid that you might need it one day, being afraid that you're doing the wrong thing. You've emotionally got to be prepared to let items go. You can't get organized. If you have too much stuff, there's no way that you can get organized by not letting things go. Basically, you're just rearranging things. You're moving things from one room to another, you're one area to another, but you have all the same overflow of stuff. So you've got to be willing to let items go. Tip number 2 is you must be willing to trust the process. You must be willing to trust the process. And it probably will feel uncomfortable to let items go in the beginning. But understand that your home will be much more organized when you have less stuff. It'll be much more functional. It'll be efficient. So you've got to stay true to the process. So what is the process? Every organizer, every person has their own process. I'm sure you've read, lots of books or listened to other podcasts about what the process is. The process that I do with my clients is very basic. It's keep, donate, sell, and discard. So you've got 4 categories of items, 4 categories that you're going to put your items in. You're going to keep it because you love it, you use it, it's got some sort of value to you, and you'll be using it in the future. And you know this, and you'll be able to easily find it. So keep is something that you're absolutely sure about. Donate is something that you really don't use anymore. Maybe you loved it a lot a couple of decades ago. Maybe it's that dress that you wore to a job interview in the 80s. I mean, people hang on to things for a lot of reasons, but a lot of them aren't super realistic to getting organized. So you want to donate items that you no longer are using, that you no longer feel necessary, and you want to put those into the donation category. The next category is one that I kind of waffle with my clients, because what is your time worth? But there can be a sell category if you've got items that are expensive, that maybe you've got cameras or computers or high-end clothing that you don't really use them anymore, but you're not willing to just donate them to the Goodwill. So you might want to sell them. So they would go into the sell category. And then discard. Discard is anything like obvious trash, obvious recycling, but it can also be like a dress with a big stain on it, or a shirt with a big tear on it, or something that's just worn and no longer usable. If you wouldn't personally go into a thrift store and pick out that item, then probably no one else will. No one wants puzzles with missing pieces. No one wants half-painted canvases. Perhaps maybe there's an artist out there, but if you really want to be realistic and stay to the 4 categories, trusting the process, then you're going to get rid of items that are not usable. Theoretically, I know there are items you can fix, etc., but you really don't have the time and the energy to find the person to repair them or to repair them yourself. A lot of you haven't ever repaired things to begin with. So items that are broken and that are not usable to donate, you're going to want to discard. So that's the process. That's it in its basic form. That's what I use with my clients. And we look at every single item and see what category does it fall into. And and if it's not serving you any purpose, you've got to let it go. You're going to donate, sell, or discard it. And that's basically the process. The process allows you to create space for the things that you love and the things that you can use. And that way they're easy to find. Tip number 3, you must, this is a hard one for people, be willing to get rid of items even if it's not the perfect home. It's time to stop saving items for the perfect person. I know a lot of people save items for hypothetical grandchildren or hypothetical nieces and nephews that aren't even brought into this world yet. And it's really time to let things go, make it easy. If you have a donation center that takes a variety of items, it's time to get your items to that donation center. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with them. You're going to be stuck with the clutter, and you're not going to be able to get organized. Now, I know there might be a book you want to give to a girlfriend or a certain sweater you want to give to your sister. That I totally understand. But a lot of people are hanging on to items for so many different reasons or hypothetical people. For instance, excuse me, I'm working with a teacher right now here locally, and you never want to ask because it's rude, but I would say she's in her 80s. So it's been quite some time since she was a preschool teacher. But she's literally has a spare room that's full of all of her teaching supplies. And I don't think she's listening, but if she is, definitely love you, love working with you. There's no judgment here. But so she had this room that was just completely full of teaching supplies, preschool teaching supplies that are probably about 50, 40, 30 years old. Now, some of the stuff was actually still good. Poster boards, I mean, some of it was still relevant. She kept everything in really good shape. And when I first started working with her, we needed to so she's kind of declining health-wise. So we wanted to clear out that spare room and put a hospital bed in for her. And so that was very important to her. So I was all excited because I've been working with her for years, and I don't think anything has ever left her house. I thought, wow, she's going to get rid of all the preschool stuff. That's fantastic. No, she had me move it all from her spare room into a pod sitting in her driveway. Well, after several months, her husband was just totally over the pod payment, the space that it takes in the driveway, because they weren't able to park there and it's hard for them to walk into their home. So she finally called me and she said, I'm willing to let this stuff go, but it's got to go to a young teacher that's just starting out. And I know a lot of you teachers out there feel the same way. But right now is a really crazy time, as I was talking about in the beginning. And I personally know that a lot of personal people just aren't accepting random things from other people because of the coronavirus. It's very hard to find some young teacher right now and ask them if they want all of this stuff. And she didn't know anyone, so it would maybe be a Craigslist post. I don't know. But right now with the pandemic going on, I thought, this is just way too cumbersome. You've already spent money on the pod. Now we're moving it back in so that we can sort it for this perfect teacher. And I hope you see where I'm going, that sometimes saving things for the perfect person really backfires against you. And with the pandemic going on, honestly, what I said is if you can donate, let's see what you can donate, because she had a lot of brand new, well, I guess they're not brand new, but 30-year-old crayons that were still in the box, never been used. I said, let's just donate them. So there was a smaller thrift shop that she liked a lot better than the Goodwill or a larger outfit. And they took a majority of her stuff because she had kept it in such good condition. And, I asked her afterwards, do you feel bad that it didn't go to a teacher that's just starting out? And she said no, that she thought she would, but in fact, she was truly, truly relieved to not be dragging that stuff from one room to the pod to back inside of the house and having trouble with her husband over it. That in fact, she had wished that she had just gotten rid of it a long time ago, because now she was able to focus her energy and her time on other things that she wanted to get done in the house. So you must be willing to let things go, especially during this time, to not to anywhere, to a donation center, to a friend's child, whatever you can do to let go of items right now is what you're going to want to do, because a lot of the times you're going to find yourself hanging on to items for the perfect person. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have hung on to little trinkets and items and blouses and, oh, well, maybe I'll have a granddaughter one day and she'll want it. And it's like, you don't even have a granddaughter. What if it ends up being a grandson? Unless it's some sort of family archival thing or something that's been passed down for generations. If it's just some little, butterfly necklace that you picked up at an art show one time, it's really time to let it go. You don't want to save it for your hypothetical granddaughter, or maybe a child will move into the neighborhood. I know it's a nice idea, but those nice ideas are really what's holding you back. So you definitely, especially right now during the pandemic, want to make sure that you get rid of stuff, even if it doesn't go to the perfect home. And even though it's not the perfect home for you, perhaps it's the perfect home for the person that picked it up at the thrift store. Maybe somebody wanted, those nice pastel art pens, or maybe somebody wanted a brand new pack of notebook pads. Whatever it is that you're saving for someone else, I definitely invite you to just go ahead and donate it, give it away wherever you can. Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, during the pandemic, it's really time to stop holding on to things so that they go to the perfect place. So now I'm going to offer you 3 tips on how you get started in your house. And like I said, this is definitely one of my bigger questions that people ask me because they're overwhelmed. They look around their house, they go, I don't even know where to start. So my favorite place to start is the low-hanging fruit. Trash, recycling, junk mail, anything that you're okay with discarding, go ahead and get rid of it. There's things like old wire hangers, there's old Tupperware, there's dried up beauty products, moldy food from the fridge is a great place to start. I definitely suggest starting in the fridge or in the pantry, because you're going to find that a lot of things are expired and you're going to be able to make a lot of room quickly once you get rid of those items. And you'll be able to get rid of them in short order, not hanging on to them for the perfect this or the perfect that. So starting in the refrigerator, starting in the garage. A lot of people haven't been in their garage for a long time. They don't even know what's in their garage. And if you have rodent damage, which is way more common than you think, a lot of people think that they only have, they're the only ones with a rat problem. I mean, several months ago, I hate to admit it, but I had a rat problem in my garage. It happens, right now with the pandemic. I've heard that the rodents, they're not, they're used to eating a bunch of scraps and whatnot. And so now they're coming into the home. So if you've got anything with rodent damage, I mean, things that are low-hanging fruit, things that you are okay with throwing away in the garbage or recycling or absolutely donating right away. That's where you want to start. I don't recommend starting with sentimental items, because you might tear up, you might get frustrated, you'll get emotional, and you'll stop the process and then not want to re-begin. I also don't advise starting with paperwork, because even though a lot of you have a bunch of paperwork isn't something that you can obviously see that you've made a big dent in. Like, I've spent 8 hours working on, 3 boxes of paperwork with clients, and then they look around and their house is still a complete mess. And you can't even tell that these 3 boxes have been sorted. So you want to start out with something that gives you a big bang. You want to start out with something that you say, wow, I'm so glad I cleared out my fridge, or I'm glad that I got rid of all that stuff in my garage. You don't want to start out with things that are meticulous, like paperwork or jewelry organizing. You want to start with the low-hanging fruit. Tip number 2, tackle one area at a time. And this is something that I personally, when I'm in person with people, help them focus on, because it's really easy, whether you have ADHD or not, to jump from one place to another or go from one room to another because there's so much to get done. So you really want to just tackle one area at a time. And if you're overwhelmed with it being an entire room, then make it just half of the room. If half of a room intimidates you, then make it just a quarter of the table. I like to suggest that people take sheets and cover up the rest of the area if they find themselves getting easily distracted. So that way they can just focus on that corner of the table. And no matter if your tip number 3 is, no matter if you're doing an entire room at a time or a quarter of a table at a time, a key thing that you want to be doing the entire time you're decluttering is sorting items by like categories. This is something that's incredibly important so that you can see how many of each item that you have. Once you move into larger spaces, you can consolidate these items. I personally suggest keeping the categories very, very broad, because when you have these micro categories, sometimes you forget what pile is what, or it might take you a little bit longer on each item to decide what category is what. So, what do I mean by these broad categories? So let's say you're decluttering your kitchen table. It's stacked high with miscellaneous items. You're going to want to have some boxes ready. And I like to sort things by room. So the category is actually a room. And it makes it very, very broad and easy to just, distribute your items into their correct categories. And sometimes I ask people to do this, or we do this together, because before they even start making decisions, because sometimes it's hard to make a decision on, what stapler you want to keep when they're not all together. So you've got your kitchen table, you've got some boxes, and you're going to want to label them bedroom, bathroom, office, craft room, whatever your rooms are, you're going to want to label these boxes. If you have other family members that live in the house with you and some of the stuff is theirs, you want to have a box for them, even, mom or your daughter. But you don't want to get into these micro categories. What I mean by micro categories is, instead of doing bedroom, you have, shirts, pants, purses. You've got 17 different boxes that have to do just with the bedroom. When you're first starting out and you're first overwhelmed, try and keep the categories as broad as possible. And I like using rooms because a lot of the times rooms are obvious. Where does the spatula go? It goes into the kitchen box. It doesn't go into the utensil box, because if you start micro categorizing your stuff, then you're going to forget which box is which, and each item is going to take your brain on a run through all the categories. So you're going to want to have, no more than 5 or 6 categories. And you take your items from the table, you put your scissors in the office category or in the craft room category. Even if you like to have scissors by you, go ahead and just put them into that broad category to begin with. And then once you get that whole table sorted out, you can go in and start going through things. And then as you're going through things, you might get smaller categories going, like office supplies. But when you first start out, you definitely want to use the broad categories. If you're overwhelmed on where to begin and you're not good at decluttering, use the broad categories. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And I know that a lot of the organizing books have the Ohio rule, which is only handle it once. But when you're working with excessive clutter, that's really not realistic. It's okay to touch items and break them down into categories before you sort them. Because by the time you're done sorting, you can see, oh my gosh, I love using scissors. People love scissors. I personally don't, but I'm not very crafty or creative. So, but I if you see you have 25 scissors in your office box, then you're able to say, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Maybe I can donate half of them. So it's okay to handle things more than once. It's really not realistic when you have excessive clutter or you're struggling with hoarding disorder to not touch things. You've got to touch things more than once. So someone once told me that you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And that's such a strange metaphor because I love elephants. So it's hard, but it makes a lot of sense. You've got to take these big projects of getting your entire home organized, and you've got to break them down into more manageable chunks. And that means going area by area. That means sorting in broad categories so you're able to see what you have. And with my earlier tips, you've got to know in your gut that you're ready to let things go. You've got to trust yourself. You've got to trust the process. If you have this visceral feeling that you're never going to get organized, then honey, you're not going to get organized. You have to know inside of yourself that you're ready to do the work, that you're ready to let things go. You're going to commit to the process, and you're going to use some really easy strategies to help you along the way. It is time to start letting go of all of that stuff. It's weighing you down physically, it's weighing you down emotionally, and it's weighing you down spiritually. It's hard to keep your head up when your house is very cluttered. It's hard to keep your head up when you're feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. So let go of those things that are weighing you down. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed. Turn on your notifications so you know when I am putting out a podcast. And I'd love to hear your comments, either on YouTube or feel free to email me directly at rachel@collectorcare.com. Until next time, collectors. And remember, happiness is a place between too little and too much.